Hey gang, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew, talking today about whether or not you need to balance encounters in an RPG setting. And my short answer here is no, you do not. But you do need to base the difficulty of encounters on the actions of the players. And what this does is it creates a situation, there's deadly areas in your world, or if the players go there, they know they're going to run into deadlier monsters. And then the activities of the players can both cause creatures to notice them, more deadly creatures, and decide to do something about them. But the players also begin to discover things. They begin to go up a ladder, a network of relationships among NPCs and creatures and, areas where it gets deadlier and deadlier. So the idea here is you're not just doing this where as the players go up level, whether you have a CR system or whatever in your RPG, you're just making the monsters tougher and tougher, but it's always kind of the same battle. There's just more hit points or abilities, or maybe you have the glass cannon effect or save or suck situation, all that kind of stuff that you can run into when you go up to the higher levels. Whereas I prefer to make it about what the players are doing. And it's funny because you have this perception among some players that in the older systems there was no balance, right? Any minute you could walk out and a red dragon flies over and kills the entire group, first level players. And the thing about that is, what we found was it was GM style, or referee style as we said in those days, that caused imbalanced encounters. There were referees, I'll just keep saying GM because it's the thing we use now. There were GMs that had deadly worlds where at any minute you could die. And then you had GMs who had a Monty Hall type world, as we call it. Some people said orange slices. Everybody gets a prize. You always win. You always get all this treasure and you just go up in levels and that sort of thing without any risk. Well, what we found as players, either of those examples wasn't very fun. The thing is, you want to be challenged. You want to be on the edge of losing everything. But you don't necessarily want to just know at any minute, any of these sessions, whether it's first level or fifth level or whatever, I'm just going to get killed and I barely survived and it's a miracle, or we're always losing 2 or 3 members of the party every turn. You don't necessarily want that. It can be depressing, but you want to be challenged. The other thing about the old systems, if you look at the very first monster menu, which came out before AD&D, Player's Handbook, or DMG, and they have the numbers appearing. When you read that, you'll see it says that the number appearing indicates a good average spread. This number is furnished as a guideline only, and it should be altered to suit the circumstances particular to any adventure as the need arises. It is not generally recommended for use in establishing the population of dungeon levels. So what this tells you is, instead of just rolling this number and saying, oh, there we go, that's the number we get, you as the GM are making that decision, which lends itself to the approach that I'm talking about, where you have areas where you're going to meet more deadly monsters, right? Or more of a specters or something, or some undead demons, whatever it is, you're going to meet more of them than in another area. It's a deadlier area. The other element is, as you go up, creatures that are interrelated with one another, and they become aware of you, or you figure out, you get some random orcs and figure out where their encampment is. Well, you go to that area through the information, the player's activities, there's going to be more of them. It's going to be a deadlier encounter. Because it's not that you're ignoring the CR system of whatever RPG. You want to have a sense of how many of each creature with the group is going to be a deadly encounter as opposed to medium, hard, whatever the criteria in your system is. It's good to know that. But you want the players to be active in determining whether they have that encounter. Because the thing is, with a random encounter, if I go to a deadly area, the random encounters can be deadly. If I'm in the farmland right outside the city, the random monsters are not necessarily going to be that deadly. Unless there has been some unkeg is coming up and eating farm animals or something, so their players go there to get that. They are actively... They're saying, does anyone need help or whatever? They're investigating, they find this out, then they go there, right? Or Umber Hulks or something. Then they explore the Umber Hulk, or I think on kegs, do they move right through? I think that might be the Remore House. I can't remember, but if there are tunnels or whatever, and the players explore that, now they're in a new area, which could be more deadly. So even though they're in the farmland area. The other thing this does is it creates a verisimilitude in your world when you have deadly areas, as opposed to just pegging everything to levels, which again is an artificial, game construct. So here you're making it as part of the world. There's verisimilitude because we all know that, here be dragons on old maps and stuff. It was always considered that remote areas or lonely, desolate areas like moors or swamps or, totally forsaken areas where no one goes, those are considered deadly. That's where the monsters dwell, right? And this is just a Grimm's fairy tale kind of conception of the world. But of course, we're playing a game, a literary based RPG game where we're using this kind of storytelling technique. So it makes sense that these certain areas are going to be nastier than others. And the players should know this generally. I always give my players, I talked about this, the lore of the world that they grew up in. So they have a sense of the kind of the known world and those areas that are deadly and those areas they shouldn't go. And the thing is here, you're not preventing the players from going to these areas. If the players decide, well, we don't care, we're going to go to the Swamp of Infinite Evil. I always use that as my example. Okay, but you're going to run into nasty stuff. But what you want to do, basing it on their activities, is to give them an edge. Give them a map. The classic is the back entrance to let's say a swamp with a black dragon. Players aren't really ready for this, but they have a chance to sneak in through the back and perhaps steal some treasure or get some advantage on the black dragon. That gives them an edge. They're making the decision to go to this area, but they have some kind of edge. They have some kind of information so that they can take on something that ordinarily would be too tough. Because the players you always want to punch above your weight class, right? Because the rewards are greater. Because you do peg rewards typically, if they meet 5 orcs and they defeat them, they run off and they drop everything and they've got 10,000 platinum pieces, you're like, well, this doesn't make sense, right? Why it doesn't make sense? Well, it's partly the game, but partly logically, like why would 5 orcs have 10,000? How could they carry them? Let's say in gems or something. Whereas a dragon in its lair is going to have, 10,000 gold gems of varying value or something. It's a tremendous treasure because this dragon is a difficult creature. It's just the way the game is structured, and it's the way it's logical. If you go to Fort Knox, there's a lot of money there. If you go to a local bank in a little town, not as much. In the days when it was all currency was kept real currency, right? It wasn't digital. So that pegs itself to, again, the idea that certain areas have more reward and hence more risk. Bonnie and Clyde never knocked off Fort Knox, and even Goldfinger couldn't do it. Another thing that you want to think about is having dynamic areas that they change. So let's say the classic cliche is that when you get on a ship as a player character or join a caravan, they're going to be attacked. They might make this trip 100 times, nothing happens, the players go, they get encountered. Well, the thing about this is, first of all, when the players do go, if you have a caravan that's going through an area with no activity, like why would they hire guards anyway? But let's say they just do as a general practice, well, then you're not going to have encounters. But if they go through an area where it's known that there are bandits or shipping lanes where there's pirates or sea monsters or whatever, they're going to expect that. And then if it's super deadly, they're going to be well compensated. You want to go, this is the caravan guards through the Swamp of Infinite Evil. We're going to make this shortcut or something, or collect some plants there or something. I don't know, an expedition. They're going to be well rewarded, and they're probably going to run into deadly things. But you can also have it dynamic, where there's been a change. The shipping lanes that formerly were totally safe, suddenly there's all this pirate activity. Suddenly the monsters are attacking. So the players then actively, when they're looking for things to do or they hear about this, they decide, okay, we're going to go see what's going on in the shipping lanes. But there's a risk, right? There's a chance that they're going to run into something really deadly, perhaps over their pay grade. There's a chance they could all be killed, right? And again, what you want to do is when your NPCs are explaining this and whatnot, they should tell them, this activity out here, the things have changed and such, you better be careful. Right? Just like they would know you go through the Swamp of Infinite Evil, you're risking your death. And here's another thing. If the players discover some secret entrance to some dragon's lair and they go in and they steal the treasure, now they have a nemesis. Now this dragon wants to get its treasure back. And that dragon may go to an area that is heretofore safe, less deadly, because it's looking for the players. Because when you have a nemesis, when you have enemies who are out to get the players, and you should have them, especially as they go up in level. They need to be developing. If they're doing things, they're making enemies, right? That's what happens when you're active. So they could go to these deadly areas to seek out the players. So again, this dynamism, it doesn't stay the same. The players can make a formerly safe area into a hellscape. So the key thing here is it's player agency that's going to determine the difficulty of the encounters in whatever RPG system you're running. They decide to go to an area where they know deadly things happen. They do activities that cause deadly creatures to take up notice to them. They begin to make connections and figure things out and find, through this group and that, they find the entrance to some dungeon or whatever that's deadlier and deadlier, and they're aware of that. They're making discoveries in that way. They're influencing the world in such a way that more and more deadly things are aware of them and perhaps want to wipe them out. It's not just random monsters occurring at any time that can kill them. And it's not just random monsters that are totally easy and we're constantly hand-waving battles and whatnot, or maybe you want to run those. Maybe in your group you want to run these easy battles. I just don't. I run a zillion battles. So I want things to have a certain balance but I want it to be through the players' activities. If they need to go some area and they know they can just wipe these guys out, they can just negotiate. Just say, look, we need to find this information. You guys are obviously not as high as us, just tell us, and then maybe they run away, maybe they make some feudal death attack or whatever. But it's always through the players' activities. Let them determine how deadly the battles are going to be, because the rewards will be higher if it's a deadly encounter. And again, as I've said many times on this channel, human beings are above all else greedy, and they will go for the treasure. You just set it out there and then let them suffer the consequences. So hopefully that's helpful to you. If you like what you see, please subscribe to my channel. Always looking for more. Leave some comments. Love to hear how you determine whether you think there should be balance or whether my strategy of the areas and player agency is better or something else. But most importantly, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.